Okay, so we have the situation here where Dhritarashtra is on this field. Well, sorry, he's in his Stanapura, and he is watching this. He obviously, for whatever reasons, he's got an anxiety that he's going to lose the kingdom. He's got a great amount of fear. He's very anxious. So he chooses to stay away. Now, what we must remember that in the first chapter, we're not going to get much philosophy. This is why the first chapter is not taken up publicly. So there's not much philosophy. However, there's a lot of psychology, and we're going to, as we go through, you'll be able to see the psychology playing out. So what happens is Dhritarashtra is actually the blind king, and now he is asking Sanjaya. Sanjaya is with him. Now Sanjaya has been granted this vision, as it were. He's been granted the vision to see what's happening on the battlefield. So he is he's relaying the events to the king. So what we have to appreciate is Dhritarashtra is completely infatuated with these sons of his, but he is anxious. He's worried. He thinks that there's something going to go wrong. Now, it's interesting because he says there, assembled on the sacred field of Kurukshetra. Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. Dharmakshetre is the field of piety or purity. And Kurukshetre means the field of conflict. So what do we see has happened here? See, it starts off Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. Dharmakshetre, field of strife, Dharma Kshetre is this field of piety, purity. Kurukshetre means field of conflict, strife. So in the first two words, he's summarized that the entire state of the world. What's happened? The whole world, which is blissful, has become a field of strife, a field of conflict. Now, this applies both individually as well as collectively. So we see this more than ever in the world today. This is why this philosophy is timeless. It's as applicable then as it is now. You'll find values after values after values. You can apply it then, you can apply it now, you'll be able to apply it in the future, because values and truths of life persist. They continue. They're not dependent on time, situation, environment. The truth is the truth. So, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. So this field of purity, this blissful state that you are. Remember, all the masters are saying the same thing. You are the self. You are that absolute state of supreme bliss. Yet, through your identification with these matter equipments, you have become this limited personality. You have fallen into this field of strife, plagued by challenges. Kurukshetre. Now, it's interesting. He calls it assembled on the sacred field of Kurukshetra. There's another meaning to this. It is called sacred for one reason and one reason alone. Anybody can guess why he's calling this field? The field is where they're having the battle. He calls it sacred. The blind king says a sacred field. Any ideas? I'll give you a clue. It's a transferred epithet. I don't know if any of you know what that means. Transferred epithet. Unless you've studied English or have a teacher like mine who studied English, you probably have not heard or understand what a transferred epithet is. But I can't see half of you, so I'm sure most of you are on your computers. Well, all of you have to be on your computers to be watching this. And I don't know what's on your screens there. But it's easy enough to quickly Google, what is this transferred epithet he's talking about? I've only just clued onto this now, you know, that I know why some people get the answers right all the time. And they're just checking Google there. Transferred epithet. Why does he call it sacred? Anybody? Hi, you're trying to talk.
Yes, I am. I'm just trying to say that word slowly.
Transferred epithet.
All right.
Okay, anyway. So the reason that the field is sacred is because of Krishna. Krishna is on that field, and therefore the field is sacred. Wherever Krishna is, that is sacred. See, again, Krishna represents a self-realized person, a person who has attained the state of perfection. So wherever he is, good follows. Wherever he is, that is sacred. So it's a transferred, he transfers the sacredness of Krishna, because Krishna is present, onto the field. So the war's about to start, and Dhritarashtra, the blind king. Now, why is he blind? See, it's all symbolic. Everything has a symbolism. Again, he is blind because he is blind to the atrocities committed by his sons. He doesn't see it. And this is what happens. This is what we call as bias. It blinds us. We all have our biases, every one of us. Even I have biases. See, why have I decided to hone in on specific aspects of the verse and not others? Perhaps it's a bias. Of course it's a bias. Even to an extent, why has Swamiji concentrated on one thing and not another? He feels that that's more important. That's a bias. And nothing wrong with it. We all have these biases. Now, the idea is to function outside of our biases. Not that we have to do what is opposite of what our biases denote, but when we talk about being objective, it's seeing things as they are, not how we would like them to be. Dhritarashtra is blinded. He's blinded by this infatuation, by this bias he has. He's obviously favors his sons over the Pandavas. But he knows this guy's not a stupid guy. He may be vicious, but he's not stupid. He can see the writings there on the wall. See, as soon as he lost Krishna, in other words, he's lost the self. They have plunged into worldly and material sensuality. He's lost the self. And this is why he finds himself where he is. On the back foot with the writing on the wall. The war is about to start. Dharma kshetre, kurukshetre. This resembles every single one of us. How has this beautiful field of bliss, the state of bliss, fallen into this strife? What did the sons of Pandu and Man do, O Sanjaya? Remember, Sanjaya has this ability. He can see what's happening in the field far away, and he relays the events to the king. And you may say, how is this possible? What is psychic? This is the conversation that starts up. Oh, Sanjaya has got a vision. He can see on the other side. Is this possible? Can we see this today? Can we do it? Nothing like that. All it means is the TV was there. Broadcasting, like everyone is watching the sport these days. They broadcast the sport. So you don't have to be at the stadium to watch the game. Same thing there. The chariot flew in the sky. Aeroplane. Yes, Jess.
Sorry, this might be a dumb question, but who is speaking there, or who is saying that? Who is referring to the ground as sacred? Is it this blind king?
The blind king.
So he's saying, and how does he recognize Krishna as the self and therefore the ground as sacred? Does he recognize another state, or who's attributing that sacred adjective to the ground because of Krishna?
That's Dhritarashtra. Everybody knows Krishna. Yeah, Krishna's like everybody knows Swamiji, right? Even if you haven't met Swamiji, there's a reverence for him. Wow, this man that's produced all this literature, that's set up this academy, that he's a great man. Similarly, Krishna, from birth, he'd done amazing feats. His whole life was just a symbol of perfection, a symbol of peace. Everything that he did was righteous. Everything. Everyone knows that. Dhritarashtra knows that too. So that's why he says it's on the sacred field. Nothing sacred about the field. It's a battle zone. It's a war zone. But it's sacred because Krishna is there. See, we're pulling out this. Well, Swamiji's pulled out this meaning for us. We just sit there and we look at the translation. Assembled on the sacred field of Kurukshetra, desirous to fight. What did the sons of Pandu and Man do, Sanjaya? See, what we have to appreciate is that Swamiji spent years and years and years on drawing out a message. And basically, how would you call it? Deciphering. He's deciphered what's being said there. For any normal person like us, devoid of intellect, to try and pull out the meaning, even from a simple verse like this, is very difficult. Most people would just scan over it. First chapter, apparently nothing happens there. Let's just move. But you can see how much is in there. So this is the work that's essentially been done for us. So yes, just to come back to your question, Dhritarashtra knows the magnitude of this man. He knows the caliber of the man, and that's why he's referring it to the field as being sacred.
Okay.
He was not always blind. He went blind. He became blind. He wasn't born blind. He became blind. And as in fact, when he became blind, what his wife did, and this is in the good old days, is such identification. She swore never to see again. Again, is don't take any of this literally. It's all symbolic. This was the reverence that the wife had for the husband. Husband is blind, then I must completely identify with him, and I shan't see the world either. Again, if we start getting into it literally, even other scriptural texts, the Bible and that, you take it out of context or you take it too literally, the meaning is lost. We lose the actual impact of what these masters are trying to say to us. You okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Sanjay uvacha drishtva tu pandavanikam vyudham duryodhanastada acharyamupasangramya raja vachanamabravit pashyaitam panduputra. Sanjaya uvacha दृष्ट्वा तु पाण्डवानीकम् व्यूढं दुर्योधनस्तदा आचार्यमुपसङ्गम्य राजा वचनमब्रवीत्.
Sanjaya Vacha. Sanjaya said, indeed, having seen the army of the Pandavas arrayed in battle, King Duryodhana then approached the teacher and spoke these words. So, just a note for those of you who have the book. You'll notice if you open up the book, you'll see that in the beginning, the chapter, and we did discuss this, I'm not going to go into it in depth, but you'll see that the chapter is divided up into topics, just to establish a thought flow. And you may, of course, again, well, hold on, let me finish this thought. So the chapter is divided up into these topics. The first topic was verse 1, Dhritarashtra's question to Sanjaya. Now he talks from verse 2 to 11 is the second topic. Duryodhana betrays his vanity and fear. Then verse 3. Sound of conscious terrifies Kauravas. Emotions overpower Arjuna. Arjuna tries to justify his false vairagya. Confounded and distressed, Arjuna collapses on the battlefield. Again, these are not in the original texts. Swamiji's put them in. Otherwise, it's very difficult to follow the sequence of thought. With the topics in every chapter, it really assists in you establishing a thought flow. See, you must understand why and how he's moving. When you're able to understand why and how he's moving, it becomes a little bit clearer. Otherwise, why you jump from here to here and what's he saying here, just verse after verse after verse you go through and then you lose direction. What are we on again? So it's very useful to flick back. It also just gives you that overview, right? What's being said here? What's the topic of what we're covering? It's very helpful. I often flick back to the topics and just say, okay, what's this verse got to do in the broader context? So the verse pertains to a topic, the topic pertains to a whole chapter. And the chapter is the yoga of Arjuna's despondency. That's what we are discussing. You'll find that each chapter is the yoga of, the yoga of, the yoga of. Why is that? Why is every chapter the yoga of? Anybody? Any ideas? It's quite interesting. The yoga of Arjuna's despondency. The yoga of knowledge, the yoga of action, the yoga of renunciation of action and wisdom. Yoga. Keeps on saying. Each chapter, the yoga, the yoga, the yoga.
Craig, wouldn't we use those things to learn and get closer to the self, which is what yoga is, essentially, a tool to get back to the self? Correct.
Excellent. So it's a reminder that this Bhagavad Gītā is nothing else than for our evolution. It's to assist us to get back to the self. Remember, yoga is to join, to unite. Comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, join. So we are attempting to reunite or unite with the self, hence yoga. So the first chapter, the yoga of Arjuna's despondency. And we are discussing now the second verse. So this Sanjaya now says that he's been asked, right? Dhritarashtra has asked him, what's going on there? What's happening on the battlefield? So Sanjaya says, indeed, having seen the army of the Pandavas arrayed in battle, King Duryodhana then approached the teacher and spoke these words. So he is now relaying to the blind king what is happening. So King Duryodhana is approaching the teacher being Dronacharya. Now, you got to bear with us. This is 47 verses, and most of it is just names of people that have no meaning to you, mostly not to me, but I've luckily read the Mahabharata once. So I know the kind of where they fit in, but for you, there's just going to be names and names. In fact, we get to portions where we're just going to fly through the verses because this fellow blew his conch, called this, and then this fellow blew his conch, and then this guy was standing there. It would be like, again, you go to a football match, and Messi was on their side, and Ronaldo was on the other side. That has some meaning. It's got some context, you know. You can relate to that. Yeah, and Kolisi was standing there, the leader of the one side, and this fellow, other Botha, was on this side, ready to charge down. And then the All Blacks, they started doing the haka, and you know, then you can relate to those. How are we relating to these people from thousands of years ago is very difficult. But nonetheless, we must understand what's going on. So Dronacharya, he is the teacher, he's the guru. He taught both bands of brothers archery. The reason that they are both so well equipped and so good in their field of archery and their field of this field of remember, they're all kshatriyas, they're all warriors. They're really proficient in fighting because they've been trained by Dronacharya. He is the teacher of both sides. Now, it's interesting, again, they use the word Raja. Now, Raja means king. Raja is king. They use the word Raja. You see here, Raja, king. But they use it in the same context. It's used in the same context as Guru, teacher, Acharya. Now, there's a subtle suggestion here. You see, King Duryodhana then approached the teacher and spoke these words. King, you see, traditionally, even the kings bowed down to the masters. The masters, because they were the wise teachers, they had a reverence. Now, it's just subtle. You'll miss it if you don't have the proper background and proper insight. King Duryodhana, he then approached the teacher and spoke these words. So the reason they put together this king and acharya in the same sentence is it shows this complete lack of devotion. Lack of devotion by the Duryodhana towards the master. So this just gives you an idea of the caliber of people that are, or the caliber of these vicious brothers, the Kauravas, vicious brothers. This gives you an insight. The person who has taught them, imagine you going up, you see me on the street, someone who's been teaching this subject for many years, and you walk past me and you don't even bother to say hi, or you with your friend and you don't even, you pretend not to see me. It's a disrespect. Of course you wouldn't do that. Craig, how are you? Nice to see you. Whatever the case. I'm just giving you some modern day context. This is different. They're on the battlefield. So he just walking up to the guru as if he's nobody. Yeah, I'm the king. Yeah. Teacher, yeah? What's going on? So he is, Duryodhana he's also fighting. He's on the battlefield as well. So all this verse essentially is illustrating is this lack of devotion, lack of respect. This is the type of people that the Kauravas are. Remember, the whole kingdom has fallen into unrighteousness. One of the ways in which they describe this, very interesting. They describe it as women drinking in the morning. Women drinking in the morning. You may say, what of it? Yeah, I can see you all laughing. Public holiday, Craig, don't you know? We had a champagne breakfast this morning. Women drinking in the morning. This is the lowest state to which humanity can fall, when the women are drinking in the morning. We got to derive it. Okay. I'll explain it to you, because otherwise you're thinking, what is wrong with drinking in the morning? So it's all right in the evening. Man gets home from work, the woman has prepared the food, and he's been out all day toiling. And he says, you know what, I'm going to have a drink. Now, before that, the state of absolute purity, no one is partaking in anything. They probably come home and put some bhajans on, listen to some spiritual discourse, something like that. Then there's a degradation in society. What happens? They come home and instead of going to Vedanta class, I'll give it a miss today, let's have some wine instead. And the men come home and they have their drink, right? Then what happens? That's in the evening. It's okay, acceptable. Tamasic time, hard work, have a drink when you get home. Then what happens? The women start joining them. Oh yes, I'll have a drink with you. And the women start drinking in the evening. Okay, permissible, it's still okay. We're still all right. As society degrades more and more, what happens? The men start drinking during the day. They start taking drinks in the day. Women follow suit. We've now lowered ourselves. People are drinking during the day. And maybe some of you can identify with that. I don't know. Finally, or not finally, one stage lower than that. First thing in the morning, the men start drinking in the morning. Pretty bad state. When the men are drinking in the morning, you know that the society has declined to a pretty bad state. Only one stage lower than that. And this is where he says, the reason I'm telling you this is because this is the state of the kingdom. They say the women were drinking in the morning. So the one thing, the men drinking in the morning, now women drinking in the morning. So this is the state of unrighteousness which prevailed. This is the state that the kingdom has fallen into. And you can start understanding how he portrays these leaders. Duryodhana was one of the commanders in chief there. In this Kauravas, the Kauravas had taken over the kingdom, remember? And the Kauravas now were these vicious brothers. In fact, just by getting they wanted in a gamble. They tricked Yudhishthira. They tricked him. And they took the kingdom unrighteously. And now 13 years it has been falling into unrighteousness. So here you see how he's slowly starting to show you his vanity. He's showing you his lack of respect.
पश्यैतां पाण्डुपुत्राणाम् आचार्यमहतीं च मूं व्यूढां द्रुपदपुत्रेण तव शिष्येण धीमता पश्यैतां पाण्डुपुत्राणाम् आचार्यमहतीं च मूं व्यूढां द्रुपदपुत्रेण तव शिष्येण धीमता.
Behold, O teacher, this mighty army of the sons of Pandu, arrayed for battle by the son of Drupada, your wise pupil. So he goes on. Behold, O teacher. See, Duryodhana refers to the army as mighty. O teacher, behold, O teacher. This, remember, Duryodhana approached Dronacharya, the guru, and said, look at this mighty army of the Pandavas. The Pandavas is the opposite side. I hope you're all following, right? Here we are now with the bad guys, the evil, the vicious, Kauravas. If you can't remember Kauravas, just remember evil, vicious. We here with them in their corner of the ring, right? So Duryodhana is saying to Dronacharya, he's saying, look at the mighty army. Now it's interesting because, and I'd mentioned this in the introduction, in fact, the Kauravas army had more than the Pandavas army. I think it was 13-7. I may be wrong. It's something like that. So these Akshanis, they're called, is the battalions. One battalion is a collection of, there may be X number of elephant in there, X number of soldiers, excuse me, X number of whatever, missile launchers, X number of fighter jets, whatever. One battalion is there. So the Pandavas, on the Pandava side, they had only 7, whereas the Kauravas had 13 Akshwanis. Almost double. Sorry, 11. It's 11. 11. So 7-11, right? Yet, Duryodhana is referring to their army as mighty. Interesting. See, this is the psychology in it all. So what is this? Again, what is it portraying? Again, we're understanding the nature here. This is very useful in, you can apply this. If you understand this first chapter, it's so easy to get on in the world because you understand how people function, right? From 2 verses, we understand this guy's character straight up. He's saying, mighty, look at their mighty army. There's an element of fear. Why would he call their army mighty if he outweighs them, if he's greater in number? Fear. Where does fear come from? Wrongdoing. See, whenever you've done something wrong, whenever you are partaking in unrighteous behavior, there's always a fear. Look at one of the best ways to look at this is look at all carnivorous creatures. Now, carnivorous creatures, doesn't matter whether it's eating insects or is eating other flesh of other animals. You always see those animals, even a fox. You can't go near a fox. It's always afraid. They're always, ready to run or ready to get out of a situation. Wrongdoing, killing, unnecessary killing. Now, you go up to a car. You go up, nothing it does. So then maybe you get a stick. You give it one whack. You're not afraid of anything. So now you may say, no, but how's a carnival has to act according to his nature and everything acting according to it. It's just an analogy. And basically, what it is describing is any person who knowingly does wrong. See, again, these people, they're not stupid. There is application of intellect. Remember, this is a different time, a different age. The thinking capacity of that time and age was different to it is now. It was a little more chaste, one could say. There was an understanding. They understood the laws and everything. They had been educated. Now, the reason they choose to follow the unrighteous, there are always unrighteous people in the world. You can never eliminate righteousness. You can never eliminate unrighteousness. There's always going to be times when righteousness prevails, times when unrighteousness prevails. And that's not the point. Whenever one feels they are doing some wrong, there's this inherent fear within them. Now, Duryodhana is vicious and corrupt. He potentially, you see, even in the aggressive bad, and I don't know if any of you recall this concept. When we refer to aggressive bad, what we mean is someone who acts badly but applies his intellect. Remember, we talked about aggressive and passive, and don't take that meaning aggressive. He's he wants to fight. Not like that. Aggressive simply means use of the intellect. 4 types of people that are qualified in terms of aggressive and passive and good and bad. So of course you have the aggressive good who apply their intellect for selfless actions. You have the aggressive bad who apply their intellect for vicious, manipulative, conniving, wrongdoing, bad things. Then you have the passive good who are just simply good, good people. They don't apply their intellect. They are mind-led. Then you have the aggressive bad. They just do bad. They don't know why. There's no intent to do bad. They just are bad. Now, these Duryodhana and the lot, vicious, aggressive, bad people. Now, the reason that aggressive bad people can't trump the aggressive good is because the aggressive bad people, what's happening is that conscience within them, that subtle intellect, keeps on pricking. See, we all have that conscience within us, right? I'm not talking consciousness, I'm talking about the conscience. We have a conscience within us that even when we do something wrong, it pricks. Now, we may take heed to it or we may not. That's why we always say, everyone knows right from wrong. Functioning on what we think is right is a different thing. Because why? Because that subtle intellect is always there pointing towards the truth, pointing towards the higher. So what is actually going on here is that these aggressively bad people manipulating, doing evil in a way that consciousness is pricking and they are agitated. You'll find this happens often. Aggressive people are highly agitated. They don't sleep. They can't sleep. So this is often associated with selfishness. They are highly selfish people. They only got their own interests and concerns at heart. That's all they're worried about. What can I get for my family? Let me get the kingdom. Not for my cousins. They're actually all family. This is the extent of their selfishness. They can't even see beyond the immediate family unit. No, only my sons, only their brothers should have the kingdoms. Not not my not my brother's sons. No, in other words, not my nephews and that. They shouldn't have the kingdom. This is the extent to that selfishness. That circle of identification is so reduced, it's so small, that they are only identifying with their close relatives. Is everyone okay? Mark, is it not sarcasm and in a way looking down upon them by patronizing the severity of the situation? Can you explain that, Mark? I'm not quite getting what the question is. Okay, well, Mark gets onto that. Yes, Jess.
Sorry, could you just finish that train of thought? I might have missed something along the way. You said the reason the aggressive good don't, you might not have used the word overpower, overcome, or whatever the right word is, the aggressive bad is, and you said that the conscience pricks, but I missed the sort of end of that thought or something there.
So when we, the reason the aggressive good trump the aggressive bad is because the aggressive good are functioning in line with their conscience. They are applying or using or have a unveiled subtle intellect that directs their actions towards the truth. This is why we call these people as evolved. We call these people as stalwarts. They are righteous. Why? Because they are attuned to the truth. They're only functioning towards the truth. They've only got one goal in life. That's to unite with the self. And through that, you find that all their actions are selfless or highly unselfish actions. So they are actually lining up their personality in all departments to attain that absolute state. Where the aggressive bad fall off is that they are doing things against that conscience. It always pricks them. So they're always agitated. Now, a person who's agitated, we appreciate, cannot function properly. If you're agitated, it's best not to partake in any actions, because you won't function properly. You will make a mistake. So here, what's happened is the aggressive good will always triumph over the aggressive bad. Not necessarily in this context, but this is the reason which differentiates them. One is completely unagitated. The one is highly agitated. You're always going to trump because we're dealing thinking here, and thinking translates into action ultimately. So a person who has no agitations and functioning towards the higher, that guy is unstoppable. You can't stop that person. In fact, later on, I think it's in the 13th chapter, he talks about that self, getting that proximity to the self, and the self becomes a supporter. One of the things that is said is one of the worst things you can ever do. And there's parables and parables of this in the Shastras, is interfere with any person who is attempting to gain knowledge. Is the worst thing you do. You accumulate a massive amounts of bad karma, if you will call it that. And this is depicted in the Rakshasas. You see, whenever there was a yajna going on, yajna is a worship. Now, whenever there was a yajna going on, what used to happen was these Rakshasas, these demons used to come. And they used to try and disrupt that. They used to try and disrupt the undertakings. They used to try and disrupt the procedure. And invariably, these demons would meet with some horrible fate. They'd be wiped off. Many, many stories are there. In fact, Krishna himself is responsible for slaying many demons. And not that he was fighting some evil fellow, one guy with 4 arms coming. It's all symbolic. You cannot mess with a person who is on the spiritual path. Advice, a word of advice, don't mess with someone who's on the spiritual path. So yeah, you got someone who's dedicating all their energy, all their effort into the unification with the truth. And these guys are aggressive, bad, coming along and disrupting that. The laws protect you. They deal with these fellows. So any way you look at it, many ways are given there, Jess. Any way you look at it, you can see how disadvantaged these aggressively bad people are. Okay. Again, questions can come in the form of a chat. Sometimes I can't quite understand the question and I'll ask for clarification. You're welcome to unmute yourself, put up your hand so we can continue the discussion. Okay, everyone okay?
अत्र शूरा महेश्वासाः भीमार्जुनसमायुधि युयुधानो विराटश्च द्रुपदश्च महारथः अत्र शूरा महेश्वासाः भीमार्जुनसमायुधि युयुधानो विराटश्च द्रुपदश्च महारथः.
So here are heroes, mighty archers, equal in battle to Bhima and Arjuna, Yudhana, Virata, and the Maharatha, great chariot warrior, Drupada. Now, as I said, there's going to be a lot of this as we go through. And all Duryodhana is here is he's enumerating the names of these famous great warriors. Not in his side. Again, he is giving the names of all the great warriors in the opposite side. You'll see the name there, Arjuna. Arjuna is he's the one in the chariot. He's there with Krishna. He chose Krishna, in fact. So essentially the Bhagavad Gītā is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. This is just the, this is just the build up to that. We're going to get into this conversation. This is when the real philosophy starts. As I said, this is just a lot of psychology, and we're going to go through it. So you see how, again, he is pointing out all the great warriors in the opposite scene. See, if he was making a big fuss about the great warriors in his team, it would be different. But again, remember, the topic is he is, betrays his vanity and fear. So these are all subtle cues and indications showing us where he actually is. See, I don't know if you've heard that expression. They were shaking in their boots, and all it means is they were worried. Even with a stronger team, even with the more battalions, they were worried. Something wasn't right. So he's just enumerating this.
दृष्टद्युम्न काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान् पुरुजित्कुन्तिभोजश्च शैब्यश्च नरपुङ्गवः दृष्टकेतुश्चेकितानः काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान् पुरुजित्कुन्तिभोजश्च शैब्यश्च नरपुङ्गवः
So again, Drishtaketu, Chekitana, and the valiant king of Kashi, Purujit, Kantiboja, Shaibya, the best of men. So you don't have to worry about this too much. He's again just giving the names and of these great warriors on the opposite team. He calls them the best of men. We don't know who these people are. Again, like I said before, in the modern context, we can say, yes, this one was on this team, and that one was on that team. It's the same thing. So again, there's nothing really for us to relate to in what he's saying here.
युधामन्युश्च विक्रान्तः उत्तमौजाश्च वीर्यवान् सौभद्रो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्व एव महारथाः युधामन्युश्च विक्रान्तः उत्तमौजाश्च वीर्यवान् सौभद्रो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्व एव महारथाः.
So again, and mighty Yudhamanya and brave Uttamauju, Saubhadra, Draupadeya, all indeed Maharathas, great chariot warriors.
अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तान्निबोधद्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तान्निबोधद्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते.
Okay. So, the 7th verse, he goes on to say, O Dvijotama, know also those who are distinguished among us, the leaders of my army. These I mention to you for information. So after he cites the names of the chief fighters in the Pandava army, now Duryodhana, draws attention to the leaders in his army. Again, we're going to hear this going on and on. One thing, this Vijotama, this is worth noting, literally means best among the twice born. Best among the twice born. See, just a note here for all of you. You'll appreciate that we are meeting once a week, all right? Now, there's a lot of time between this Wednesday and next Wednesday. To be precise, 1 week, 7 days. I don't know how many study sessions that is. 6 study sessions. 7 if you include Wednesday morning. So actually there's 7 opportunities you have to review what we covered. So I'm not gonna go through everything, every name of everything. You can do that. In fact, you'll notice that the format is slightly different here. We're not reading out the commentary, because by now we appreciate and understand that you guys, the onus is actually upon you. The onus is on you to lift yourself by yourself. And that comes through your own study, contemplation, and reflection. You've got a whole week to cover all the verses that we've covered. There's a lot in there, and there's a lot in the commentary, and you've got more than enough material there that you can quite easily spend the next week going over it. So this is the suggestion, this is the direction. You need to, a lot of the onus now falls on you. Before we covered everything in class, every verse we went there, every bit of the literature we went through. And we're going to cover every verse. But you've all got the book, so you'll all be able to go through the commentary on your own. And then if anything then is not making sense, obviously I would suggest, because in class we also will be discussing it. So there'll be additional things that perhaps don't appear in the book. So if you're able to combine those two things, the class notes with the commentary, you should get a pretty good idea of what's being communicated. So this is just my suggestion on how you could choose to pursue this course of study. Remember, it is a course of study. There's a weekly gradation of study. We're going to methodically go through it. Okay, so back to our friend. So now what's happened is he's given the names and names and names. Dvijotama, second birth. Now what the second birth is, you may be thinking, what? Twice born. How do you get born twice? First birth is you come out of the womb. The body is born, the baby is born. Right. Then the child slowly starts developing, opens his eyes, it gets attached to the mom. Now, when he says second born or twice born, what that implies is that, and there's actually a ceremony, it's called the thread ceremony. The Indians may know of the ceremony. There's a thread ceremony that you have, I'm not sure the exact age, I think it's around 12 or something. And this is a ceremony that ushers in this idea, this twice born. Why? Anybody? What's happening at the second birth, essentially? Or what does it represent? Subtle intellect is always there.
Is it reuniting with the self?
At 12.
Well,
You turn 12 and you unite with the self. Oh my goodness, what are we all doing here? We must have missed the thread ceremony. Or shift off to India and hope next birth is better. Second birth, what happens at 12? Or let's say, what happens between 8 and 12? And I'm giving you big clues here.
Craig, I'm not sure exactly, but I remember you made this comment that if we really want to have our children be able to develop their intellect, you have to start early. So so, and like you say, like 7, 8, right? So I think that if I remember correctly, there's something, so it's basically when our ego develops, I would think, or when it's harder for us to actually access the intellect naturally. And yeah, something like that.
Very close.
So very close.
Very close. I'll give you 10 for effort, Sarita. I'll give you 10 for effort. No, there's, you see, this is actually, that's why I gave 10. You can't get more than 10. 10 out of 10 is full marks. Why? Why I gave Sarita 10? Does anyone know why I gave her 10? Answer may not be correct, but there's a process. There's a process of reasoning, right? This is important. This is how you need to approach this. Yeah, one thing, give an answer, but to put forward a process. This is shows that, and that's why she got 10. So yes, you're correct. What happens at 7? Remember, we always say between 7, 8, 9, around that time, the intellect starts showing in kids. Starts showing, really showing. I'm not talking about 4, 3-year-old. Wow, mom. Why's that? Why's that like that? Why's it like that? That's just immature curiosity, we can call it. But really, you see at that age, it's different for every kid. Some kids are very sharp, others are not so sharp. But nonetheless, that intellect does start showing itself at around that age. And this is why we say this is the second born, because, or this twice born, because that is when the personality is fully available to you. So you have your body is there, at birth it comes, then you slowly develop the mind starts coming up, you develop the attachments to the mother. Only much later, around 7, 8, 9, 10, does the intellect really start showing itself. That's when we say there is a complete personality. And in the good old days, that's usually when the children were shipped off to the ashrama to receive education for life. Would be like sending your kids to boarding school, not a normal, this boarding school now. Boarding school where they're only learning the truths of life. So as soon as the intellect were there, the ceremony, Upanayanam, they call it, they would ship them off, and the children would then get educated by the guru on the truths of life. Once they left there at 17, 18, well prepared to face any challenge in the world, any challenge. They were well equipped to meet those challenges of life. So he's referring here, Dvijotama, the twice born. Know also those who are distinguished among us, the leaders of my army. These are mentioned to you for information. And then you'll see how he goes on again. He starts giving the list of names of the members of now his army. You'll see the list is much shorter. A much shorter list. Okay.